Jennifer Palamas from Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is Barbecue Central.
Yay! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike your match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
All right, good evening and welcome back to the Barbecue Central Show. This is the show that talks about all things important in the world of barbecue and grilling, in case you forgot over the course of the last week. This show originating, and you must know this, originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. And I'm your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evenings, a live fire fun and frivolity show. If you would like to get in contact with the show this evening, or you would like to follow the show during off-show hours, here's how you do all that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at BBQCentralShow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you get the newsletter coming up in about 12 minutes from now, second Tuesday of the month. And that means a visit in that first interview slot, 14 past the first hour, being Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. And I'm not worried, but traditionally, he's already in the green room by now, and his box is black. So I'm a little nervous. I see Robert Moss checking in here, of course. I sound checked with my second hour guests a little earlier today and last evening. So by all accounts, everyone ready to rock and roll, just a little iffy on Meathead, but he's supposed to be here, and we have some topics to cover that may or may not shock you, as I had mentioned in that aforementioned newsletter. 35 past the first hour brings a visit from second Tuesday of the month guest Robert Moss, Southern Living's contributing barbecue editor, robertfmoss.com, his website. And we're going to be talking about two different topics. So we didn't get to the main topic last month. So that's going to be brought to the forefront here during this segment here in June. And then we will also talk about, or we will lead the segment with the impending Juneteenth celebration that's coming up in about 8 days from now, or exactly 8 days from now. So stay tuned for that, and that'll bring close to the first hour. And then we will move to the second hour, where we will have a visit from what most people call America's Butcher after a 5-year layoff. Pat LaFrieda will rejoin the show. Excited to talk to Pat again. And closing the show this evening, first-time guest. And if you have been thinking about how can I use my pellet cooker without having to plug it into my damn house, we got the answer, and it's Mark Ritvalsky will join us from Ritzworks. And if you've never heard of Ritzworks, RITZWERKS.com, you can get a little preview there, but we're going to be talking about one option that can untether you from the house outlets, and we'll also talk to you about something that's just now starting to be talking about in their portfolio. Both have a moose theme to them, but I'll leave it right there for now until we get to him in about an hour and 25 minutes from now. So that's how the show is setting up for you this evening. The normal first hour on the second Tuesday, a Meathead and a Robert Moss appearance. And then in the second hour, Pat LaFrieda, 14 past, and 35 past the second hour, Mark Radvalsky from Ritz Works. Don't forget, you can follow me socially, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, and LinkedIn, all at the handle at BBQ Central Show. We say good evening to those of you watching this show tonight through one of our video streaming platforms. You can go to facebook.com/BBQ Central Show or twitter.com/BBQ Central Show, or you can also watch on YouTube, which is youtube.com/@BBQ Central Show. We also have a new YouTube poll question of the week, and it's already changed 3 times in the last 2 hours, but we're going with this one tonight. You are shocked that Joey Chestnut has been banned from this year's Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest, and currently 62% of you are saying yes, you are shocked. Perhaps the follow-up question is this: you are more shocked that he is aligned with Impossible Foods as a sponsor outside of all the other potential hot dog courtships that could have taken place. Ballpark, Nathan's, of course, Sabret, Hebrew National. These are ones that I'm just coming. Oscar Mayer as a wiener, of course, that we all know and love to sing. So plenty of different hot dog, 5-star natural case wieners, the snappies as I used to call them as the kids were growing up. Plenty of options to go traditional hot dog sponsorship, but somehow he has found himself aligning with Impossible Foods, so not even real meat, if you care about that. Obviously, he doesn't. So that could be the follow-up question of the YouTube poll question of the week, that you are shocked that Joey has aligned with Impossible Foods as a sponsor. Results from the last YouTube poll question of the week that we had, that was 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I asked if everybody had a Sam's Club membership or not, and 54% of you said no, you do not have a Sam's Club membership. I wonder how that's going to translate here over the next handful of months as we continue to promote the Members Mark gas grill that has that great thermostatic control on it. We'll be talking about that here in a few short minutes. Plenty of places for me to start. Of course, wasn't in the house last week. Believe it or not, I went international to the great country of the Bahamas. Passport, did Atlantis, which is a resort, flew into the airport on Nassau, and limoed over to Atlantis, where at parts during the ride, little sketchy, but then we went over the big bridge onto the resort property, and that at least gave a veil of security. And then once on property, we did what adults do, and we can just leave it at that. We get into it later if time allots. But there was a much bigger thing that transpired, so that's why I was out last week. So hopefully you caught the John Tizar interview, and then on Tuesday, so that would have been a Wednesday release, and then Thursday's release was the Chunk Foods interview with Amos Golan, from the creator, founder, CEO of Chunk Foods. And then Friday, you did not see a best of show because I forgot to put it in the feed. Of all the things that I remembered, I didn't put it in. It'll be ready to go this coming Friday. It's already in the feed, ready to be released at schedule, so no worries about that. The thing that really chapped a lot of people's asses was this. Somebody made an Instagram post about chicken wings, and specifically about how they take them up to 200 degrees internal temperature. Now, to us, the people in the know, certainly no news to us. I don't know if you're the type of person that would take his chicken wing to 165, 170 degrees. I don't find that they eat that well. I find they eat and are much more juicy and succulent. You get the fat to render out a little bit more through the skin when you take it up into 190s, into those 200s internal temperature. So somebody had made a post about, this is the key. Don't be stupid and take them off at 165. You're not going to have this great eating experience. At some point in the diatribe, he referenced the fact that wings are dark meat. And I happened to lob a post into the many that were there that said, hey, FYI, wings are white meat, Chief. This guy has an allegiance of fans, much like Malcolm Reed does. All of a sudden, it was 30 replies, 40 replies later asking me, no, they're not. It's dark meat. Blah, blah. I said, look, I happen to know. Championship pitmasters hailing from the New England area who won chicken at the Jack Daniels with chicken wings. And that is a white meat turn-in. Mandatory. No dark meat there. That's a white meat turn-in. Well, needless to say, I was taking flack all over. I was one man. I was a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Meanwhile, all my replies are correct. I was right. It's white meat. Just look it up. But everybody was giving it to me about how it was dark meat and who am I and what do I know. Never mind. Don't do any research on who made the post. You stick to your guns. White meat is chicken wing. And if you think any less, you're wrong, and we can discuss it later. How about that? Diane Mee, 2018 Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer. Wings are white meat, indeed. And yes, by the way, Jack Daniels requires white meat turn, of course. So there's no Meathead in the box, so I'm going to have to send him a message. But before we do that, let's talk about my pals over at Winners Products. Winners Products. Say hello to the future of grilling with our patented thermostatic control technology. We've told you about it for weeks now. 2 cooking modes right here on this grill that allow you to cook all the ways that you want. First up, barbecue or grilling mode. Your traditional grilling experience with variable temperatures, giving you control of each burner to adjust exactly as you want it on your terms, just like you do with all of the different grill options that are out there with their knobs sitting right there on front of the grill. Or you can enter the game-changing oven mode. Simply set the thermostatic control dial to your desired temperature, and your grill transforms into a precise oven. The choice is yours. In fact, monthly guest, first Tuesday of the month, monthly guest Malcolm Reed just did a video showing how to make ribs using the oven mode. He set it to 225 or 250 or something like that, and ended up having a very successful rib cook over an extended period of time, but he locked in that temperature. So if you're somebody that only wants to have one cooker and you need it to be a grill versus a smoker, certainly you're sacrificing flavor, but maybe you like the convenience or you don't want to have more than one. This certainly accommodates. Very sexy stainless steel, 304 on the burners, plenty of cooking space. And again, 2 different options. You can use it in regular grill mode like you would any other grill, or you can dial in a fine-tuned temperature, 225, 250, and then 50-degree increments from there up to 450. And then you can flip in between if you want. And for $6.99, this is why I'm asking about Sam's Club membership. If you have the Sam's Club membership, have you gone and seen it in person? It's worth the look. By the way, not only worth the look, it's worth the purchase. Infrared side burner, not any of those cheap-ass ones you get on all the other stuff. The value is second to none. Members Mark Pro Series with a thermostatic control now available at your Sam's Club, your local Sam's Club. Don't wait. Pretty soon they'll be sold out, and then you'll be very sad. I'd say we're coming back with Meathead, but that appears to be on the rocks, so you might hear a lot more about the Bahamas than you even thought. You stick around, and we'll be right back.
Broadcasting live from the BBQ Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by cookandpellets.com, the number one source for quality wood pellets for all of your pellet-driven cookers. Visit cookandpellets.com and see what they have available from a product standpoint. And then when you're ready to buy, as I say each and every week, leave cookandpellets.com through the direction of the owner, Chris Becker. Go to Lowe's.com, go to Walmart.com, go to Amazon.com, all the same great products that you saw over on cookandpellets.com, but they have better shipping rates from those other websites that I had mentioned. So, again, peruse at cookandpellets.com, and then when you're ready to buy, Lowe's.com, Walmart.com, or Amazon.com, if you are so desired. We now race to the hotline and welcome in the creator of AmazingRibs.com, Meathead. Oh, that's not Meathead. I'm sorry. Let me punch up line 13 and we say hello to Meathead. Oh, dear. Well. No Meathead. Monthly segment. And we were just texting earlier today to confirm topics to talk on. Some of which, might I say, hotly contestable. Before we get to him, I'm sure he's racing downstairs, jumping on the computer and getting the mic fired up. We'll take a gander at the YouTube poll question of the week. I was asking everybody, you are shocked that Joey Chestnut has been banned from this year's hot dog eating contest. That would be the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest, July 4th. And currently 65% of you are still saying, yes, you are shocked. The follow-up question, you are surprised that he is aligned or have a sponsorship with Impossible Foods, with the host of other real hot dogs out there. Joey Chestnut aligns with Impossible Foods. I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption. I'm going to have the caution hot take champion coming in. Impossible paid him more. That's why he decided to go with the Impossible Foods hot dog. That's my guess. If you look through the news postings at 3 p.m. Eastern, all the way through even the local news here in Cleveland, Ohio, this was the hot story. This was not finishing the news day right at the end throwaway story. This was not the lead because that's usually local, but this was the third or fourth story that they covered. Breaking news, Joey Chestnut has been banned from the July 4th Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest because of sponsorship issues. Joey Chestnut made a post not too long ago saying that he's basically getting jobbed out of this, that Major League Eating and Nathan's Famous have changed how they allow their athletes. It changes how, or they have changed how they're allowing their eaters to handle sponsors. Now, look, I don't know Major League Eating to be under contract with any eater to include Joey Chestnut. There was a news report in one of the many, and they were all roughly the same, saying that there had been a 4-year offer or a 4-year contract offered to Joey Chestnut, roundabout $1.2 million to show up over the next 4 years and eat on July 4th. There was also mention that they didn't come right out and say it, but if I'm reading between the lines, it appeared that maybe Joey started to be getting harder and harder to deal with to a certain extent, that he was feeling himself a little bit. He was commanding $200,000 appearance fees to show up and eat hot dogs. And if I'm not mistaken, if he wins, he also gets the prize pool or the prize purse for that. So he gets paid to show up. And then if he wins, which of course he's going to win, he's won it since 2016, all in a row, plus a record breaker at some point in between that run. He gets to keep all that money. Now, this isn't new. If you're a fan of the show, Joey Chestnut has been on here twice. We have asked him no less than twice how he's typically compensated, even outside of the hot dog eating contest. And he has said on the show, and we have audio to go back and prove it, a lot of times events will cover his expenses to get there. They will also pay him an appearance fee. And then if he wins, he also gets whatever the first place money is. So if you're a big eating star like Joey Chestnut and you're really into that kind of a thing and you can finagle some money, that's some real money there. Like, nobody's paying me $200,000 to show up and run live show at the American Royal. We're not in deep discussion about how they're going to be sending private planes for me, cart my happy ass out to Kansas, and then pay me $200,000 to show up and do 2 or 3 days of live internet show. Would I do that? Yes. I like money. However, that's not happening. So if you can leverage that, by the way, you will never, ever, ever hear me poo-poo on what somebody's getting. I'm a firm believer that people will pay you what you're worth. If he can get $200,000 to show up to eat hot dogs on July 4th, then good for him. If you can't, then you have to be better than Joey Chestnut. You have to do Joey Chestnut things. And he's really parlayed that career into something else. Really good social media following. Does pretty decent on YouTube at this point. Started a little late in that game. Probably could have been a lot better if he would have done it 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. But his bread and butter is going to real competitions and eating and being compensated to show up to eat. And then if he wins the eat, taking those winnings too. He used to have a real job on top of eating, and he just was making way more money eating than he was at the real job. Plus, met his wife through competitive eating. This has been a payoff. So part of me wants to say, who are you? I mean, you're Joey Chestnut. You eat. Why are you going to go away from really, unless you're in the subculture of competitive eating? I don't think any of us Centralites are in the subculture of competitive eating and know what the next biggest competitive eating event is outside of July 4th. That's the only one on the radar. That's the Caitlin Clark of competitive eating. We know July 4th, there's going to be a hot dog eating contest. There's going to be upwards of 60 hot dogs and buns eaten by one person. And then second place is well off the pace. If he's having an exceptionally good year, I think one year he either ate 74 or 76 hot dogs and buns. Tremendous amount in 10 minutes, no doubt about it. But you're a competitive eater. So why not align somewhere else? Be banned from the St. Elmo's shrimp eating contest because you aligned with Impossible Foods on shrimp, or Beyond Meat for crystal sliders, which is tantamount to White Castle. Why not do that? But don't walk away on purpose from the hot dog. Like, this is the main one, the mustard belt. This is how everybody knows you. There has to be some type of negotiation that can take place. Granted, we're less than a month out, but certainly Joey's been training for this. He sounded surprised when he made his post that he was getting banned by Major League Eating and Nathan's. Just to play devil's advocate on myself, maybe Major League Eating and Nathan's Famous have had enough of the same guy winning it year after year after year. Maybe they want to see somebody else. Maybe this was contrived all along. They figured out a way to get Joey ousted. He's on the ouster. Very well could happen. So many possibilities. And in the end, so many people don't care. Joey, go to Major League Eating with your management, who evidently appears to be harder and harder to deal with, and maybe you are too, but maybe you're not. You've always been good to the show. Would love to have you on to talk about this. This is highly hot news in the food world, and I love to cover the food world. But figure out a way to work through it. Show up on July 4th, win again, and then do it again next year. Easy business. But all that to be said, if Impossible is paying you, or they must be paying you enough for you to be able to just walk away from it. Because that is legacy building. The hot dog eating contest, that's a legacy builder for you. You stop at however many it is, 7, 8 in a row or whatever. This is where the record stops. This is where the streak stops. So that affects your legacy. That affects your legend. If you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. If you like that money better than legacy or legend and you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. Let's go. So that's the whole deal on competitive eating at the moment. I got to be honest. I can't believe Meathead has shined on this segment. This is the second time in a year.
Get that big stuff out of here. Uh-oh.
I hope he's all right. Let me go to my phone. Yeah, no reply back. He's probably fallen asleep. Or he's stuck in that Chicago traffic. Got some feedback from the shows over last week. Dennis in Colorado is writing in. Greg, oh my God, your interviews just keep climbing up the ladder. Another outstanding, entertaining, and informational interview. I don't know, but maybe John could put it together. But it seems like, especially this year, and I know it's happened previously, but more and more of your interviews are commenting on what great questions, what a professional and outstanding job you've been doing while interviewing the guest. It seems like it's every interview this year. Great job, Greg. Regards, Dennis. Dennis, of course, talking about the John Tezar interview. If you haven't heard it, might I say, and this isn't shameless promotion, and yes, I did hear from my sound snobs that I have raised since toddler. There was sound issues there, undoubtedly. In the end, I can only control so much. I ditched John in February because the sound sucked. I ditched him again, and you didn't even know about it. And then we pre-recorded this one. And against my direction, I said laptop computer or a tower computer, but that's it. No mobile devices, no phones, nothing like that. Okay. And here's the sound. Kind of skips, drops out a little bit. Unfortunately, it dropped out in some really important parts while he was talking, especially when he was talking about the Schwank Grill. And I said, John, you didn't hear this part of it because it's all edited. I said, well, the sound's dropping. Like, are you on a laptop or a tower, internet bad, whatever? He was on an iPad. So, in a way, impressive that he was able to get that great of quality of audio through, I don't know how he was able to hook up his microphone to an iPad. I don't know if he has a special dongle or whatever the hell you call it for you iPad people. But he was using a microphone that I sent him because he sent it back to me. But he was on an iPad. The thing has no processing power. I don't know how great the internet connection stability is on iPad. He was in a hotel room somewhere because he was down at his Michelin star knife and spoon restaurant out there in Orlando. So in all ways, it was bad. So, unfortunately, you will have to combat with some of that audio. But in the end, I think you're going to really enjoy the John Tezar interview if you didn't get already a chance to listen to it. Tom in Minnesota writing in, Greg, really good show. Love the Tezar interview. He is right with the point about Angus cattle marbling on grass. The Angus breed has identified specific genetics within the breed that excel in grass-finished operations. Please tell the Chunk Foods founder to change the company name. I can just see it now. Chunk Foods doesn't blow chunks. Yes. Thank you, Tom. Thank you indeed. By the way, that was also a very compelling interview. So if you missed the Chunk Foods interview, I would suggest you do a little extra listening over the course of the weekend. After you get done re-listening to this week's show, you can listen to the John Tezar interview from last week, Chef John Tezar, and Amos Golan from Chunk Foods. Hear about how he started his whole company in a Brooklyn apartment growing his product. And again, if you follow me on social media, you've seen this. So there you go. This is going to come out of left field. Mark, I see you in the green room. I fear I've given you the wrong time. So I think 9:30 your time is the one that I wanted to do, not 8:30. I don't remember if I said 8:30, but 9:30 is the one you want to jump in. So I apologize for that. Otherwise, we're going to run into some guest logistical issues. So pop back in an hour. We have you back on, and we'll talk about all the Ritz Works stuff that are going on there. So catch those two interviews. I did see somewhere in the chat room here, Speak of the Devil, Dennis. So tell us, Greg, what was the best meal you had in the Bahamas? Good question, Dennis. In the end, and I'm not I'll say this. I'm not a fish guy, but there was a restaurant on property, and they've ran the gamut of schmancy, fancy, all the way down to just roll in with T-shirt and shorts and everywhere in between. You had to really make reservations to get in. A lot was crowded and well in advance. They said, 90 days out, you want to make your decisions on where you want to eat. So first night out, we got in there and we ate at a place called Fish. No, not the first night. So second night, so that would have been Monday night. We had reservations at a place called Fish that is licensed, I guess, by Jose Andres, who is a very famous chef, of course, and he does the big World Food Relief Kitchen. I don't know the name of it specifically, but it looks like that was the winner of the week. We went to a number of other ones. The good news is this, aside from the very last night, which when compared to all of the other dining options that we ran through during the course of the week, it was average at best. And unfortunately, average at best would have been fine in most instances, but everything else was elevated. So the good news is 6 out of 7 were really good. And the 7th one just ended up being average, which, was fine. But Jose Andres' Fish was good. But what did I get at Fish? Well, of course, I got a steak. Dry-aged strip steak, dry-aged 28 days, cooked to perfection, super tender, great sides. My eating plan, for more or less, was held within constraints. I didn't blow it out like a maniac. My wife got an amazing seafood dish. And then probably 1B to Fish was Nobu on Wednesday night. Had some incredible sushi, blue-eyed tuna sushi with some avocado and rice, very simple. Had some, whatever they call it, with a piece of fish on the rice, but only the fish had king crab, and I had another piece of tuna. My wife had this blackened cod. I'm not a cod guy by any stretch of the imagination. It was insanely good. I almost ordered another one just to get one of my own. It was incredible. So I think we're going fish, 1A, 1B, no boo. There you go. Well, we missed Meathead, so we'll try and catch him in July, unfortunately. We'll have to find out what's going on. Hopefully he's all right. Robert Moss is in the green room. He's ready to go. Before we do that, let's talk about ceramic cookers. Yes, what do we love about ceramic cookers? You know what we love. We love that they're fuel efficient. We love that you can achieve low and slow temperatures for traditional barbecue meats. We love that you can get rip-roaring hot for the high-temperature grilling of steaks and other thin cuts. But what's missing in the everyday lineup of ceramic cookers? The real ability to do true two-zone cooking. Two-zone cooking is very important to both professional and backyard cooks alike. It's the best way to manage a fire and cook with confidence. However, getting a two-zone fire in a round ceramic cooker is not very realistic because it's round. So, Primo enters the game with a change of shape. A change of shape that makes everything different. What is it? Oval. That's right. You know, the shape gives you the ability to execute that two-zone setup that you desire. It also gives you the other ceramic grill benefits as well. And when you break it down, there's more than 60 different ways to configure the Primo cooker. So you're only limited by your culinary imagination. We all know that the lift hinge has been revamped over the course of the last year or so. It gives you a nice 8-pound lift, which is really light. And there were revamps to the top and bottom air dampers. Of course, you're wanting more and more accessories, and Primo has you covered there as well. The Primo Grill rotisserie, the pizza insert. So many to choose from. Regular rotisserie, if you like that kind of a stuff. The other thing that you want to keep in your hat, I don't know if it's been released yet because now we're in June. Before we left for vacation, they were still taking pre-orders for the XXL Primo. So if you wanted something that was a little bit bigger than the XL, broaching into that 500 square inches, the XXL is the one you want to take a look at. Check out the website and see what they have, for crying out loud. Primogrill.com, that's primogrill.com. Or you can find a dealer near you because they're only sold through dealers. So check out primogrill.com, find the dealer near you, visit them in person. Maybe they have an XXL on display so you can compare XL and XXL. Buy the one that's best for you. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Everybody is ready for a Primo. By the way, if any other guests drop out, we're going to be doing a Smoke Shop Barbecue Peanuts review. You might recall Andy Husbands asked me right as we were ending his segment 2 weeks ago, did you get the peanuts? I thought it was a joke. Well, a week and a half later, the peanuts are here. We're back right after this. Stick around.
Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
Welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by Fireboard. Fireboard 2, Fireboard 2 Drive, the Pro, of course, the Spark, everything you need. You can keep track of up to 6 different temperatures or 1 smoker temp and 5 internal meat temperatures. You mix it up however you like. Cloud-based monitoring. You can look right on your phone and do all that. It works with smart speakers. Most of them are integrated. So go to fireboard.com and find out all you want about Fireboard, and a longtime sponsor of this show. What is first guest here this evening is the contributing barbecue editor for Southern Living Magazine and a 2023 Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer. We are welcoming back our pal, Robert Moss. Robert, great to see you, as always. And we have a YouTube poll question of the week, and you are the first one to get asked and answered here this evening.
All right, hit me.
Not sure what happened with Meathead here, but hopefully he's all right. You are shocked that Joey Chestnut, a competitive eater, has been banned from this year's hot dog eating contest on July 4th.
I'm not sure if it was shocked, but a little surprised, only because I heard it first just in your intro section. I had not seen that news, so I was a little surprised to hear that. And then as you dug more into it, maybe not so shocked, but it was definitely news to me. So I've learned something already today.
Follow-up YouTube poll question of the week. Are you shocked that Joey aligns with a non-meat hot dog manufacturer?
I'm with you. I think it's show me the money. And I'm sure they showed me the money, and it's got to be a financial decision at that point. I seriously doubt Joey Chestnut is, making it for ethical or philosophical reasons.
You don't think he's green and he wants to lessen the carbon
I'll
footprint?
Eat 73 hot dogs, but only if they're plant-based.
Yeah. I've never seen him eat a plant-based hot dog at this point, although I'm sure he has if you're aligning with a company like Impossible. Do you put it on your calendar to watch the hot dog eating contest in July, or do you just watch the news every night at 7 on July 4th?
No, I don't. And this probably tells more about me and I typically look up sometime on July 4th and say, oh, look, they're eating the hot dogs again. So I forget that it's on July 4th. So I don't set a reminder, but somehow I manage to always be someplace where it's showing on July 4th. So it's a bit of a tradition.
I never see it. I always remember, and then we're out. And there's no TV because we're outside, and so I got to always catch it on the news to hear how many he's eaten or get an ESPN update, which is how I heard about this whole thing as I was talking about it at the top of the show. 3 o'clock, ESPN alert comes on and it talks about how Joey's been banned, and then the local news carries it, and I'm like, wow, this is actually a bigger story than I thought. Never mind all that.
Yeah.
We have a few topics to talk about here this evening. So in 8 days, Juneteenth is going to be coming across the holiday board here for people to celebrate. We're not going to take the history lesson here at this point, but I think you either know about it or you don't at this point. What I've wondered, and I've had conversations with some other folks, and maybe this just goes to show the lack of overall knowledge of Juneteenth within my friend circle. We were talking about what's the official meal of Juneteenth, or is there a specific protein that you would eat to celebrate, or a variety of dishes? I didn't know. The guy I was talking about almost had the brainchild idea of saying, hey, let's just pitch something and throw it up the flagpole, see if it sticks, throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks. What do you know about any specific traditional dishes or foods of Juneteenth?
Well, a good bit actually. I wrote about Juneteenth, or as it was frequently called in the 19th century, Emancipation Day, in my book, Barbie, History of American Institution. And so from the very beginning, literally on the very first Emancipation Day celebration, long before it was called Juneteenth, the food was barbecue. And it has long been barbecue. Barbecue was at the heart of the celebration. Literally on January 1st, 1863, which is when the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, in the parts of the South that were occupied by the Union troops, the newly freed African Americans gathered together for gigantic emancipation celebrations. There was one about 50 miles down the coast from me. Charleston was still held by the Confederates, but Beaufort and the Sea Islands were held by the federal troops. And on January 1st, the newly freed African Americans of coastal South Carolina and coastal Georgia gathered at Fort Saxon right outside Beaufort and roasted an entire ox and ate barbecue beef as the very first Emancipation Day celebration in the South. They didn't have much else with it. This was wartime. So they had a pretty skinny cow that they barbecued, and they had bread and water flavored with molasses that went alongside. But everyone there said it was all the accounts of it talked about it as being a great event. And then at that time, Emancipation Day was celebrated different days throughout the different parts of the South based upon when each state sort of the emancipation went into effect. Juneteenth was June 19th, 1865, which was the last state in Texas to be for where the formerly enslaved folks were emancipated. And for a long time, that was a Texas thing to call it Juneteenth. It was celebrated on January 1st in South Carolina, so in April in Kentucky and Tennessee. And it really fell, Juneteenth Emancipation Days in general fell out of, celebration in the early 20th century, were sort of revived in the 1960s, and they sort of come back as Juneteenth, celebrated on June 19th. So barbecue has always been the sort of staple meat of or staple dish of Juneteenth and other Emancipation Day celebrations, along with anything red. So red drink, big red soda. Red's a celebratory thing, and it celebratory color, and that's so red foods have always been part of those as well. And then I did mention Adrian Miller turned up in his book Black Smoke, a wonderful thing called Juneteenth Goat, which apparently has been a Mississippi tradition in the back in the 20th century, sort of a substitute for barbecue. Rather than being cooked on the pit, it was something generally more made by women for the celebration. They would get a goat several days in advance, slaughter the goat, brine it for a couple of days to, as they said, to get the goat out of the goat. To get the goat flavor out of it, and then would boil it and then roast it and sort of have it as a Juneteenth goat. That I think has fallen off on the wayside, since the 1960s or so. But if anybody is going to have Juneteenth goat, next week, I would love to be invited to sample it.
It just seems like goat, lamb was so popular, and then as you had just said, it has fallen off, over the decades, and you've seen that right across the board. When we started talking about all these different topics since January, I think the lead thing was how popular goat was, and now it's just not on the board. And yet here's another example of goat being really popular, and today there's probably not going to be a lot of goat roasts.
Yep. And I think this was back at a time when, people still lived on farms and they still had goats on the farm, and you could go pick the best one out and slaughter it for the celebration. If you wanted to get a goat today, where would you go? I mean, good luck. You could find some, probably have to go to some of the, Hispanic markets or something to find it, but it's not something that's easy to get your hands on today.
We'll track all the goat roasts that are happening in Juneteenth this year. And I'm with Robert. If you're going to have one, local Cleveland area, please, invite me. I would love to hang out for the goat cook. It was a May topic, but of course we're in June at this point. Unveiling the diverse seasonings and marinades used in Southern barbecue. So the thought here was to delve into regional variations and any historical evolution of the spices and the rubs and other flavoring techniques. So I guess when we think of Southern barbecue in the beginnings, what did it look like? What did it taste like? And how we have evolved over the decades.
Yeah, and I'm going to focus probably most specifically on the word rub, because that's something that I think today people, it's one of the first things I think about with barbecue. What's your rub? Do you have a secret rub recipe? There are countless brands of rub on the market that you can go buy. And it's a funny word because you don't really rub it so much. It's really a spice blend that you shake on. At least most people will say don't rub it into the meat, shake it onto the meat. But it's one of the funny things about barbecue history is that some of the things we do today are centuries old and have been done since, even before the American Revolution. Other things in barbecue are relatively recent, and like pig pickings, for instance, that word is not that old of a word. Barbecue rub is another one. So I sort of set out to say, when do we start having this thing called barbecue rub, and where did it come from? Barbecue seasoning was pretty much not a regional thing. We talked about how sauces, I think in the past couple of shows, how sauce was pretty much a 20th century innovation, if you will. Same thing with the seasoning. If in the 19th century, almost the only seasonings were really salt, pepper, maybe some lard and butter, some kind of fat. And that was what was used to baste the meat or to season the meat. You can find in the early 20th century some people selling things called barbecue spice or barbecue seasoning, but it's really just a blend of salt and pepper. It's really nothing special. The first instance I can find of something called a barbecue rub was from 1938, which historically is less than 100 years ago, and that wasn't really associated with pit cook barbecue. It was more at the time that people were starting to take barbecue, excuse me, and adapt it for either cooking in an oven or cooking on a grill. And so you see the earliest rubs are recipes calling to sprinkle on either pork ribs or pork chops and then bake them in the oven or roast them in the oven. Same thing with a couple, right after World War II when grilling was really taking off. There's lots of barbecue spice or barbecue rubs that you see on the are being not so much in the market, but more in recipes. But they're almost always being called to be put on steaks. So when you're grilling it, and I think the idea there is that you're doing something hot and fast. You want to add a little extra flavor to it, and so people started coming up with rub recipes. It really wasn't until the 1980s that rub started emerging in the barbecue context. And I have a hypothesis that sort of had to do with two things: competition barbecue, which was emerging at the same time, and the rise of Memphis. There was this huge flurry in the 1980s of Memphis barbecue across the country. There was a chain called Red Hot and Blue that came out. It was a Memphis style barbecue chain, and they sort of spread Memphis style barbecue all over the country long before anybody ever heard of brisket. And I think that Memphis style rub on those ribs, that's sort of when it began to be picked up everywhere. It showed up in like Rich Davis's and Shifka Stein's book, in a couple other cookbooks in the late 1980s, and suddenly barbecue rub was everywhere. So in the course of a decade, it went from no one ever heard of it till everyone had their secret rub recipes, and then they were selling it on the market and everything else.
Is it just more because is it more because of technology and quicker ability to access of information, where 70, 80 years ago, maybe somebody said barbecue rub, but there's just not the same ability to spread vocabulary and new thoughts and recipes or whatever?
Yeah, for sure. I think it had to do with the new interest in barbecue, where barbecue's already been around, but people weren't writing about how to cook it. There were lots of cookbooks that started coming out in the 1980s, 1990s. For the first time. There were no barbecue cookbooks in the 1940s. No one told you. You learned from your grandpa or from your uncle. And then newspapers got really interested. So people started running all these articles, and they would pick up and run recipes. So I think, the new availability of that information really shaped people could learn about how to cook barbecue, especially people who are learning how to do competition barbecue, not by necessarily learning how the guy down the street did it, but by reading a book or reading something in the newspaper or trying things out. And I think we've talked in the past, like talking about Ray Basso and the barbecue forum. The internet then became sort of the next wave of that, the barbecue forums. And of course, social media is sort of where it is today and how the information is being exchanged. So yeah, I think it very much had to do with changes in how people learned how to barbecue, over the decades.
Anything else from, so outside of the rub stuff, are there any thoughts on sauces or brines or anything like that we would want to know about?
Well, that's what's interesting. I mean, if you talk about the regional differences, it wasn't even that long ago. I think it was about 10 years ago. I did a series for Serious Eats where I was interviewing pitmasters everywhere, and everyone I talked to in the Carolinas and Georgia, I was like, "What's your rub?" Or what? And they're all like salt, and it's just Morton salt in the blue can. Barbecue sauces we've talked about, those developed very early on. I think the big difference is still in the Carolinas, it's very simple. It's salt and maybe pepper, maybe some red pepper in terms of like something that you're going to season the meat with. I think in Texas, which is a different type of cooking, if you're putting something in a pit and you're going to slow smoke it in that sort of gentle bath of smoke, that's where you're getting a very heavy crust of pepper. Almost everyone's using Lowry seasoning salt out there to get a little extra flavor to it and put it on the crust. You really don't see that today in the Carolinas, except with the guys who are sort of trying to do Texas style barbecue. But anybody who's sort of doing a traditional Carolina style, they're salting the meat, but that's just about it.
Maybe salt is, I don't think it's overlooked, but maybe we don't need to be so complicated in trying to buy all the different rubs that all the pitmasters are selling out there, so we can layer 3, 4, 5, and 10 different layers of rubs on our ribs and everything else, and just go back to using some salt and throwing it on the wood.
Yeah, some of the best ribs I've had in a long, long time were from a guy named Robbie Robertson at City Limits Barbecue up in Columbia, South Carolina. He ran a food truck for a long time, and just in the last year opened a brick and mortar. And he always did his ribs on the offset Texas style pit because he does Texas style brisket. But then he's a South Carolina guy. And he sort of started wanting to get back to direct heat. And so what he did was he took an old, I don't know if I'm not sure what kind of pit it is, but it's some kind of offset pit, a small offset pit. And he basically took and put pans up underneath the grates. And instead of putting, burning a fire in a firebox, he actually uses a burn barrel, shovels the coals up underneath the grates on that offset, and then puts the ribs on top. And so he's direct cooking the ribs, good 2 feet or so above the coals. And he puts nothing on but salt. And the difference is just fantastic. It's amazing. And I think it's the difference in the cooking style. So if you're going to do in the offset and you're going to do them low and slow, and you can add that burst of flavor. But if you're doing them direct over the direct heat, the juices are going down. There's something magical about the alchemy. All you need is a little bit of salt, and everything, the smoke does the rest of it.
It's almost like a rendezvous rib to a certain degree, except they use charcoal.
Well, the
right?
rendezvous, no, it's a little bit different, but it's similar in that they are cooking direct heat over coals. The difference with the rendezvous is they pull them off and then they shake that. They call it rub, but they don't cook with it on there. That's at the end. They're finishing with it, that super thick red crust. Whereas Robbie's not doing anything. His seasoning's already on there. Now, the rendezvous ribs look a lot better. They have this great red color from all the paprika. And, Robbie's look sort of grayish red. But boy, do they taste great. Now, I love the rendezvous too. They're both, it's two totally different things. The rendezvous is more something you gnaw and you chew. It's got like a real chew to it, whereas Robbie's much more tender and smoky and delicious.
Breaking it all down as he has been doing every month since 2024 started. Robert Moss, the website, robertfmoss.com. Robert, anything you want to promote here before I turn you loose tonight?
Not too much. I've got a new piece out for Southern Living, not about barbecue, but about my picks for the 20 my 20 must visit restaurants here in Charleston. So if you are planning a trip to Charleston, South Carolina, my choices, or at least my recommendations of where to eat, check it out at southernliving.com. You'll find it. Should be right there somewhere on the homepage.
Robert, always appreciate the time, and we'll see you in July.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Talk to you then.
Fabulous as always. Great Juneteenth insight, of course, talking about traditional dishes. And again, if you're in the greater Cleveland area listening to this and you celebrate Juneteenth and you're going to be doing it with a goat, call me. I'll cover it. I'll bring a field recorder. We'll do the whole thing. And then learning more about the history of rubs, when it first started making an appearance in print and coming up to present day. Always great stuff with Robert Moss. And he's been worth his weight in gold this year. Great topics, great information. Go back and listen to the 35 past the first hour segments in every second Tuesday of the month so far in 2024. You're going to be smarter barbecuey. You're going to be a smarter barbecuer. Let's say that. All right, we'll leave it here, and we'll come back and wrap the first hour. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Robert Moss for joining us last segment, robertfmoss.com, his website. If you're going to be visiting Charleston, Southern Living Magazine has this top 20 Charleston restaurants. So if you want to see where Robert would be telling you where to go eat if you're pulling vacation duties down there in Charleston, take a look at that. And then rate his reviews, rate his suggestions. Write your own article. Submit it to Southern Living. This is what I think of Robert's suggestions. I went to 5 of the whatever. All right. We are heading to the second hour. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Sylvie Curry from Ramona, California, and I'm listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
Boing.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me.
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle. Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude.
Succulent fish. What?
He ate 2 feet for wiener.
Oh, listen, Libertius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour. It's the Barbecue Central Show, where we talk about all the most important things going on in the world of live fire, even outside of live fire, as we've been talking about in the first hour, and you'll hear about here in just a second as we review the poll question stats. Talking a lot about Joey Chestnut getting banned out of the hot dog eating contest.
Hit me.
Tyler Bloom in the Facebooks. Do I get a shout out for tagging you in the post, Greg Rempe? Yes, of course. Ask and you shall receive. I just happened to catch that at the right time, so I remember to say. Diane Me through Facebook weighing in. Business Costco sells whole goats. How about that? Maybe I can have my own goat roast. Guy, the Cooking Sam, don't ever stop doing this, Greg. We need you. The show? Don't ever stop doing the show. I don't have any plans on stopping the show. As long as I get one download, I will do the show. Sponsors can dry up. Most of you can go away. But remember, I started doing this because I wanted to do it for me. I like it. So as long as I'm doing it, then as long as I'm doing it for the right reasons, yes. By the way, something really big happened to me at the day job. Here we go. I don't know how it happened. I'm a fleet, I don't know what they call it, major accounts manager, whatever I've been for the last 2.5 years, 3 years. Been very hard through the pandemic for me to actually do that job. We won't get into that. Somehow, and again, I'm not sure exactly how it happened. Your boy has just received promotion to director of sales. I must interview really well. Like, I know I'm pretty good at interviewing, but I got some sage veteran advice from my dad, and I went in against all odds, and I found out very late in this whole nomination process, like the whole job opening portion was closing. Somebody said, "Oh, you're not going to apply for the director of sales position?" I said, "Are you talking to me? I'm just the sales guy." "Well, just go ahead." "All right, why not?" So I quickly ran through it, submitted it. I had to update a resume, which I hadn't done in 6 or 7 years. Do all that. Had to do a new round of lying on the resume. And then got the first interview with the HR lady and went in to the second round of interviews, then third round with the boss man. He's the guy that hired me. And lo and behold, I thought there. So the reason I'm saying I can't believe it is because the way it sits, well, not the way it sits now, but the way it sat before today, when the official announcements went out, it was, my boss, Then there were these 2 regional managers. And then there are a number of sales associates. You know how mob organization runs. So like my boss is the Don, and then there's 2. Well, there was no underboss, and then there were the capos. Those are your sales managers, and then you have your associates and made men underneath the sales managers doing the day-to-day, selling, covering territory, whatnot. And then there was me off to the side. I didn't report to any of the sales managers. I just had like a direct connect up to, the guy that hired me, who's the vice president of the truck group. He's the main man. But I was running like a side report to him. So this whole thing opens up. I apply. I jumped rungs. I skipped right over sales manager and went right to director of sales. So I went from, I don't know what's higher than a mate. Like I wasn't a capo per se, but I was capo in training maybe. And somehow I jumped, capo status went right to underboss. How about that? Yes. So now I'm in charge of a number of people. Look, let's bottom line it right now. Yesterday, in my position of major accounts manager, I was able to fire 0 people. Today, after the announcement, holding the vice president of the truck group aside, which is the guy higher than me, I can fire everybody. You're out, you're out, you're out. Just for a quick boilerplate of how things have changed in the last 24 hours. No firing everybody. That can happen. And now I get to prove that I can do directing of sales. There's a lot of reports I don't know how to do. Lots of things that I don't know how to do, but we're gonna see how this team works, because the teamwork has to make my dream work. Otherwise, like I was telling everybody earlier, this month, everybody knows about this month's sales contest. First place, you win a Cadillac Eldorado. Second place, set of steak knives. Third place is you're fired. Somebody's gonna ask me. We're gonna have the little sales talk with somebody, and then somebody's gonna ask me, "Oh yeah, big shot. How much money did you make last year?" Oh, it's not there. All this time and it's not there anymore? Now that's a shame. Never you mind what I was going to go for. So that's little big news for the day job right there. So little Peterbilt news for the biggest Peterbilt group in Ohio. There's one in Southern Ohio. Can't get full control of the state, but we're in 79% of the state, maybe 80% of the state controlled by Ohio Peterbilt. And your new director of sales also happens to be your favorite podcast host across all platforms and mediums and genres and topics and all that other stuff. The YouTube poll question of the week is this. You are shocked that Joey Chestnut has been banned from this year's hot dog eating contest, and 58% of you are saying yes. It's starting to claw back now to 50-50. So we'll watch that through the rest of the second hour here. Coming up on the best moments of the Barbecue Central show in 10 minutes or less this coming Friday. What was supposed to be the show last week is now this week, episode 337, taking you back to May 23rd of 2017. This coming Friday, barbecue legend Jeff Staney is being featured. You might know Jeff from being a competition legend with a team named Slaughterhouse 5. Slaughterhouse 5 won so much, they forced the American Royal to change the rules, if you will. Or you might know Jeff from his legendary Kansas City barbecue restaurant, Joe's KC, which features the famous Z-Man Sando. So if you're not familiar with Jeff, this will be a great way to get introduction to him. He's a great barbecue entrepreneur, a barbecue Hall of Famer a number of years back as well. His name is Jeff Staney. So look for that on Friday. Don't forget you can subscribe to the show by visiting thebbqcentralshow.com/subscribe. And don't forget, if you want to hear a guest or segment again that's been lost in the archives, you can email our pal John Solberg, Jon, John, Jon, at thebbqcentralshow.com. And he'll do his best to meet your expectation. Also, there was no Famous Dave's event this past weekend, but there was one on June 1st in Las Vegas, Nevada. Winning that, Uncle Jesse's Barbecue, and coming in reserve, all up in my grill barbecue. Both GC and RGC have earned spots in the 2024 World Food Championship in the barbecue division in November in Indianapolis, Indiana. So we congratulate them. And the next event is going to be in a week's time from now. So we're off this coming weekend, but they'll be back at it here in a week. So if you have questions about past results or you want to see the remaining schedule, you visit worldfoodchampionships.com/allstars. That's worldfoodchampionships.com/allstars, and you can get all your information there. Pat LaFrieda is ready to rock and roll here in the green room. We'll get to him here in just 1 second. Before we do that, we will talk to you about our pals over at Pits and Spits. You tired of settling for mediocre grilling experiences? Yes, it's time to step your game up. Bring the ultimate flavor and cooker to the backyard barbecues. Pits and Spits charcoal grills offering the highest quality live fire cooking experience you can get in the market today. Using either wood or charcoal, these solid fuel grills produce those classic flavors you're looking for when you have the time to fire up the grill and cook for family and friends. With a large adjustable fuel tray, you can raise and lower the fire to control and fine-tune the heat. Their take on the Santa Maria style grill. Check them out at pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. That's pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. And then use promo code Charcoal Central, all one word, Charcoal Central, for $150 off any charcoal grill that Pits and Spits is selling. By the way, not asked to be in the read. If you're looking for a really heavy-duty, kick-ass burger press, Pits and Spits is building probably the best one on the market today. They sent me one a couple months ago. I mean, is it difficult to make smash burgers? No, of course not. Does this make it a little easier? Is it a little cooler? Could you use it as a weapon? Somebody broke into your house and the chips are down? Yes, yes, and yes. pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central and use promo code Charcoal Central for $150 off the charcoal grill. And then take that $150 savings and buy a few of those burger press. Free money. All right, Pat LaFrieda is lined up. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
This portion of the show being brought to you by our pals over at Pit Barrel Cooker. The most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet, especially if you're into upright barrel smokers. 3 different sizes to choose from, lots of accessories to complete the experience. You visit pitbarrelcooker.com and tell them the Barbecue Central Show sent you, and you're going to be one happy camper. Leading off the second hour tonight is the man many of us look to in order to get the inside scoop of what's going on in the meat purveying business, whether you are a discerning home cook or a restaurant that is looking to serve some of the best steaks, chickens, and other proteins at your place of business. This is one of the premier places to turn to in order to fill that need. The man who is widely considered to be America's butcher, CEO of LaFrieda Meat Purveyors, Pat LaFrieda, joining the show once again. Pat, great to have you back here on the show after, believe it or not, a 5-year layoff. June 2019 was the last time you were on the show. We have a YouTube poll question of the week that we're asking all guests and anybody that's watching on YouTube, which is this. You are shocked that Joey Chestnut has been banned from the July 4th Nathan's Famous hot dog eating contest.
I don't even believe it. So, yeah, I am shocked. I have been his personal judge for the last 6 years, and I can't believe that he's a vegetarian.
You're the guy
I just think he's
standing
coming
in
out
front of him?
day.
You're standing in front of him counting the dogs?
Oh, yes.
You're kidding.
Counting, nope. I have that number counter, so you just keep flipping the page as he eats. So I turn over, my assistant has that, and I'm judging how many hot dogs in completion he has finished. So what a wild, messy place to be, but that is one heck of an event. I mean, the energy in there, and in Brooklyn with 20,000 people around, it really is exciting. It's a little tough. It's on the 4th of July, and getting through that area, it's a lot of traffic and such, but it's so worth it. You have to go at least once. But it's such a special event, especially during COVID and through COVID. I thought it just made things feel a lot more normal.
How do you get the job to be judge? Does Major League Eating reach out to you, or are you pals with Joey and he's like, Pat, be the guy that counts my hot dogs and buns, or what?
I met Joe there. I met Joey as a judge, but no, Nathan's asked me if I would guest judge, and I did it one year and I loved it. It was just a lot of fun. It was the only time my mom ever called me, and she's like, "You're on ESPN." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a hot dog eating contest, Mom." But it really is an exciting time there. But some wild things have happened while I was there. So right in front of me, you have the chief of police. You have, I believe the mayor was there that year also. Joey got rushed on the stage by 3 guys, and I'm shocked at how they got past all of us, all the police, and they got to Joey. And I got to give it to Joey, like, he kept eating. So he had one of them in a headlock and gave them one shot, and was still eating hot dogs and still won. It was amazing.
It's an unbelievable event. I try and watch it every year. I'm always ended up being outside, so I catch it on the news. But the one year where he ate 70. So were you there for like the 74 or 76 hot dogs and buns?
Yes.
That's
his norm.
That's got to be like the utopian day of eating. I mean, I couldn't imagine eating 70.
It's very uncomfortable.
That's the other thing is this. We're way off topic here, and I apologize. People think hot dogs. They don't ever... Most of them don't also include the buns. It's not 74 hot dogs or 76 hot dogs, 74 or 76 hot dogs and buns, which is incredible.
But without the buns, they wouldn't be able to eat the hot dogs, because if you ever watch their technique, where they dip the bread in and the lemonade and such, whatever potions they have in liquids, they dip it in. But that acts as the lubricant to get everything else down. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, and to watch them after, it's there's only one result that could come of that, and that it comes right back out. That's when you try to duck. But while they're eating, it's messy as a judge, and you're really pushed up against them. But Greg, I must say this: it was 3 years ago. One of the judges to my right had passed out, and there were only 30 seconds left for Joey Chestnut. I had to leave. With 30 seconds left in that competition, the judge to my right passed out, and with all the people there, no one helped him.
Oh, no.
So here I am. I was a medic in the military, so I grabbed him. I fireman carried him out of there. I just thought he was one of their staff. He wound up being a billionaire from Guadalajara who took a private flight in just to be a judge. And he partied harder the night before. He was an older guy. And yeah, so I wasn't there for the final count, but he won by like 30 or 40 hot dogs. It was crazy.
And you make another billionaire friend on top of that, helping him out, right? I mean, that's not too bad.
No, and he's in the restaurant business, which was great. But no, he's a very good guy.
So as I had mentioned, 2019 was the last time you were on, Pat. So plenty has transpired in and around the live fire industry over the past 5 years, not the least of which the pandemic, which you briefly referenced. How are you able to successfully navigate that in your specific operation?
It was difficult. on March 16th of 2020, that's when restaurants were closed in New York City. So we were 85% completed on a new facility in which we had invested everything in. It was a $20 million facility. It's 200 yards from here. So after working all night, I had to play contractor during the day, and getting that last 15% done was very difficult. But on the same day, we were given a presidential mandate to stay open. And so by federal law, if I would have closed, I would have faced federal prison time. When I had asked about my staff, they said, no, not just you. I'm like, okay. My staff who could have stayed home, and I have 262 folks, they didn't. They all came to work, and throughout COVID, we had 6 positives. I thought that was fascinating. It was very unlike what the media was telling us was happening in meat facilities. And I spent the first few months at work convincing customers, chefs who kind of like threw the towel in, and they were on the couch every day watching the governor of New York like give the update, the briefing. And I just thought, you have to get out. You have to get out there. You have to do trunk pickups, do some sort of food delivery. And they asked, what does Trump have to do with it? I'm like, no, not the president, the trunk of the car. Someone pulls the car up, pop the trunk. There's no human contact. It was genius. Yeah. And just, we did things like that. And we needed to feel, we say, a lot of companies say that they're one big family, but this really is a big family. And because everyone was coming to work, we wanted to give something back, and we wanted to stop the panic, the chaos. We thought the COVID's not going to kill us, but panic may. And when people were waiting online for 5 hours in stores to find out at the grocery store that there was no food after 5 hours, we thought that was scary. So we have 50 trucks, and we sent 25 of them out to different areas of the tri-state and gave them to restaurants to hold on to because they were refrigerated. And then we would go and refill them the next day with meat, as long as the restaurant sold it on a wholesale level, and there was no one egregious, and there wasn't one case of that. We were able to, in our way, alleviate a little bit of the stress and chaos of it. So believe it or not, that helped us, and it kept us going. So retail was huge for us during COVID. So we went from 95% restaurant sales to 95% retail sales. And outside of the 5 boroughs, COVID didn't exist that much, right? You could go into restaurants, you could eat. As soon as you crossed back over into the 5 boroughs, you had to be closed. So, we still had business outside of that, but it definitely, I have PTSD from that time period. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it was hard. Imagine being at work and then someone breaks into your home and you're watching it on your Ring camera, and you can't. It's not like you even have an ability to leave. Yeah. Just a lot of crazy stories like that. But we made it through. We opened the new facility in November of 2020, and it's in operation as we speak right now. So we start in both places at 6 p.m. and I go back and forth between both.
When things started to normalize, you said you went from 95 being restaurant to 5% consumer. It flip-flops during the pandemic. So when things start to normalize again, where do the percentages shake out? Do you go right back to more or less being more restaurant-focused, or does the consumer still stick in there a little bit harder than you might have thought?
The consumer stayed in. So we were a lot of direct-to-consumer for quite a while. When restaurants first reopened, there was, not everyone believed that it was safe, and some didn't want to believe that it was safe again. So, but what we did realize is that we had the same amount of people to feed, just through a different platform. So, as things eased up, you asked when things normalized. For us, it normalized at the end of 21. But then, as we know, that there was still some scare in 22. But we saw restaurants started to come back fully in 2022. So, and I would say that we're back to 90-10. So 90% restaurant, 10% retail. And I think that doubled the amount of retail that we used to do. And that had to do with our performance in supplying retail during the pandemic. So we didn't have any shortages. There were no meat shortages in this country. Being able to get meat or food on the shelf at a grocery level, that's a different story.
Yep.
But the meat supply was there. Just getting the staff to get it out for retail sales was different and challenging. And I think that our politicians at first all acted on, in everyone's best interest and thought, how can we get past this? And there were even some reductions in requirements for retail labeling and such, because it does take a lot more time to pack for retail with nutrition statements and such. But it kept us busy. It did keep us busy. So you have to find a way. Some customers called me and said, Pat, what are you going to do with all the product that you have in inventory? I'm sure it's all going bad. I'm like, we're just as busy as we were the day before. Just, now it's going to Amazon or ShopRite, which is Wakefern, or our own direct-to-consumer. Because I remember I first told my team, do not put any more meat in the dry age room. That ends today. And it was only a couple days later we needed to fill it again. So, that to me was a good indicator that, okay, as a meat purveyor to restaurants, we do have a future. Like, we're not done. And we would never have accepted that anyway. But, that was a big indicator that, okay, these same folks they want meat, and they don't just want meat. They want prime, dry aged, or high choice, dry aged strip steaks and ribeyes, and all the stuff that we sold before. So in that capacity, it was the same amount of demand.
One of the main topics we were talking about in 2019 was, let's call it, the reinvigoration of plant-based meats. Where do you see that whole segment in the market right now?
Oh, plant-based crashed.
Yeah.
So I was one of the first to distribute Impossible, and I thought it was a great idea. I mean, it's an alternative protein. I'm not against. I'm always going to be for common sense. And if you can make protein out of plant roots, that great. But once it showed up in franchises that are very old and tired, and restaurants no longer want that product. They don't want to use the same thing. I don't want the tired franchise food brands that I'm speaking of. And when some of those brands were caught cooking that on a surface with regular burgers, that was another big problem. But restaurants that I sell to, they no longer wanted that product. So our demand for that, we've seen we stopped carrying it. We have no demand for that at all. I'll tell you what the future is, though. It's lab-based. So that the idea that you wouldn't have to kill an animal to eat protein, I think it's going to be pivotal for vegetarians, especially, because that's one of the main reasons that vegetarians don't eat meat. And you have a decent population of that. I don't think it affects the meat industry at all. It'll just have more people eating meat, though. It is real meat, as opposed to something that's a vegetable that is posing as meat. It tastes terrible. In this case, and I've tasted so far the poultry, and the poultry tastes exactly like it should. So it's very expensive. As time goes on, $40 a pound for chickens are going to be, come down to, good levels. But until then, it'll be pretty inapproachable for most. But it's going to be an option. That's where the future is, because from the way we see it, it's in the flavor. So it's in the final product. What is that texture? What is that flavor? Everyone wants to feel good about what they're eating. So as a purveyor, that's all we do is seek out the best meat to make that happen. And in this case, it's going to be the best cultured meat, I guess is the best way to say it. There are certain buzzwords that I try to stay away from. It's like lab meat, but I want to have an open mind to that, because I think there's something to that. As our population grows and supply of protein diminishes, we need to have some other way to produce protein, because as a meat purveyor, I never want to hear that meat's so expensive that some Americans can't afford it. It's a sad day, in any capacity.
I did a segment that aired in the podcast feed last week with the company's called Chunk Foods, based out of Israel. And the guy found the company through doing something completely different. He was in Brooklyn during the pandemic, started, I don't know if it was fermenting or growing or whatever, but, knew somebody, got an investor, and all of a sudden it's blossomed up. And so it's not plant-based by the definitions that we were just talking about, and protein available. So they seem to be getting traction with restaurants. I don't know where his purveyor traction, like a LaFrieda Meat, would be. If a restaurant calls you and says, hey, we've fallen in love with X or Y, is this something that you can get? Is that when you would start to entertain that? Or does it have to be a lion's share of your customers all asking for that for you to start looking outside of the traditional meats?
No, it would take one customer to ask us, and that's our job. Our job is to seek the product that they're looking for. What many don't understand about what a meat purveyor does, or any purveyor, when it comes to restaurants, is that restaurants don't ever want to hear we're out of it. If it's on the menu, the idea of 86ing something, it's a 4-letter word, man.
Yeah.
You cannot say that. And so having something in stock all the time, so you have to have it in stock, but fresh, so that it's not short dated. But the product that you were talking about, is it mushroom based?
I don't know if it's, I don't know, to be honest, so I don't want to speak out of school here, but
yeah.
They sent me a sample. So texture, look, like fit finish kind of stuff. It did a lot of stuff that none of the plant-based steaks that I had before ever did. I will say, when I ate it, there was a resounding mushroom feel for me as far as taste, profiles that it was giving me. It wasn't super tender like a LaFrieda prime beef would be. And so for me, it was like this big mind fuck. I want it to be steak. It's not. It wasn't billing itself, but it was like it. So it was almost so good, I still wanted it to be like that. So in my mind, I'm letting myself down, but I don't think it was through any fault of the product, if that makes sense.
And that was a steak?
Yes.
Oh, so yeah, I'm unfamiliar with that process, but we do work with a mushroom company that we use the mycelium. I don't know what you pronounce that. Mycelium. It's the stem of mushrooms. And, at a certain point, I asked why. So we had a 50-50 burger probably in 2016, which was 50% vegetables, which I did with Chef Franklin Becker. He roasted them. They were great. And I mixed them with our original blend ground beef to make a burger. And in that situation, it was, if you wanted to eat less meat, but you wanted that whole burger, that was a perfect solution. There was nothing fake about it. We weren't hiding or masking anything. It's 50-50. And it was now we make a 50-50 burger with the mushroom stem. I wish it tasted a little bit more like mushroom, but if you're looking to cut half of the meat out of your diet, here's another great way. And there's nothing fake about it. There's nothing genetically modified to get there. This is purely our beef and mushroom stem. The 50-50 burger had more mushroom flavor because it had more of the tops of the mushrooms than the stem. But there are health benefits to the stems, and it is another great way. I think it's a lot better than a meat alternative. So, I shouldn't say that. This is a meat alternative. So the better than plant-based. Plant-based is something developed, and they even made it bleed. Why would you want to make it bleed if you're trying to get away from meat to begin with? That never made sense to me. It didn't help the flavor out at all either. So I think that an alternative to that is eating some vegetable with beef, and that's great. We love that.
Pat LaFrieda joining us here on the show. The website is LaFrieda.com, and you can find Pat on Instagram at Pat LaFrieda. Pat, appreciate the catch up here, and I know we kind of deviated on the Joey Chestnut stuff and burned some time, so let's do it again sooner than later.
Look forward to it, Greg. Thank you.
All right, you got it. Pat LaFrieda right there. Killing it, as always. Always happy to have him on, and wow, I mean, all these years I've watched Joey Chestnut be competitive hot dog eating in Brooklyn, and right there in front of him is Pat LaFrieda counting his hot dogs. Who knew? Maybe I would have known if I would have paid a little bit more attention. All right, Mark Ridvalsky is ready to go. Before we get to him, we're talking about Franklin Barbecue Pits, the backyard version of the famed pits built by Aaron Franklin for his renowned barbecue restaurant in Austin, Texas. Built for those barbecue purists who want to take their craft to the next level. What you have with a Franklin pit is a deeply thought out and refined version of the old propane tank-style cookers that Aaron built for his Franklin barbecue restaurant. Stylistically, it reflects the kind of bare-bones industrial handmade aesthetic that he loves, as in the patina and the way the build allows you to see the welds and the craftsmanship. The schematics of a Texas off-style barbecue pit, relatively simple, even when the things going on inside the cooking chamber are complicated dynamics of physics and chemistry. Very few moving parts here. Numerous and massive differences divide the Franklin pit from your average barbecue smoker at the big box store. For instance, the Franklin pit is primarily made with 5/16 and quarter-inch thick steel, American made. That's strong. Anything that sees heat, engineered to be incredibly solid, should last a century or more if cared for properly. The thickness of the steel guarantees professional heat grade retention, a critical component in making great barbecue. Franklin pits can be found at fine barbecue specialty stores in select regions of the country. If you, the listener, are an owner of such a store and wish to become a certified Franklin dealer, please visit franklinbbqpits.com and fill out a dealer form. If you, the listener of this show, would love to own a Franklin pit, but you live too far away from a certified dealer, you can also visit franklinbbqpits.com and purchase Franklin Pit right on the website. Franklin Pits will ship a Franklin Pit to your driveway. It's that easy. So if you're a dealer, you want to become a certified Franklin dealer, visit the website. If you just want to buy outright because you live too far away from a certified dealer, go to the same website and purchase. Either way you want to do it. Building the DTC end and building a dealer network all at the same time. We are back to talk a little Ritz Works right after this. Stick around, be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Pat LaFrieda for joining us. Last segment, this portion of the show being brought to you by JRE Tobacco, makers of Aladino line of premium hand-rolled cigars. My fave, the Corojo Reserva, but they also make the Sumatra, the Aladino Classic, Puma Noche, and the 100% Corojo, or the 100% Cameroon cigar that is not released yet, but maybe in another month or so. JREtobacco.com is the place to go to find a dealer near you, or tell your retailer to carry JRE Tobacco. Helping me close the show tonight is a guy bringing a solar-powered option to the offset cooker market. Confused? Of course you are, but we'll unconfuse you during the segment. So let's welcome the CEO and Director of Business Development of Ritz Works, first-time guest Mark Ridvalsky, joining me here on the show. Mark, appreciate you jumping in here out of the bullpen tonight. We have a YouTube poll question of the week that we're asking everybody before we start talking about the products here, which is this. You are shocked that Joey Chestnut has been banned from the July 4th Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Absolutely shocked that they would tell Jordan not to play in the finals this year. It's a very, very interesting move. I don't know. You take some players out of the game and you kind of lose the game, and I feel like that's what's happening with Joey Chestnut. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if I'll be watching. Maybe we'll see what happens.
63% of the YouTube voting, public voting, in line with you and me. Shocked. The follow-up question to that is, are you surprised that Joey Chestnut is aligned with Impossible Foods?
No, not at all. It's probably just a good fit, and I'm sure they tossed him a good amount of money to come over and make the name recognition and kind of cause a little bit of stir with the news. So I'm sure it was worth his while monetarily to do it.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. Personal background and professional background on a Mark Rudbalski.
Yeah, absolutely. So my professional background is in finance. I was a financial advisor for a long time, and honestly, my day job, I still work with financial advisory firms doing, business development, things like that. But personally, my passion is alternative forms of energy out there. Really something I picked up in college, just to kind of keep me focused and kind of be a distraction from all the finance and economic stuff that you do to kind of become a financial advisor. And I've just always really had a pretty big passion for energy. And, you grow up, you get married, have kids, stuff like that, and your passions kind of take a little back seat for a while. But kind of as I became more successful, just took advantage of, a little bit more income, a little bit more time, believe it or not, even with kids, and decided to kind of chase my passion here and work with alternative forms of energy. So I started Ritzworks off of that, and here we are. We started out making solar powered pergola kits, which were pretty popular back in 2019 during actually kind of right before the pandemic started, we started. So seems like not the best timing, but with
for that it's perfect, right?
Yeah, right. You're spending more time at home. People were really, really into watching TV and homeowners, HGTV, stuff like that. So definitely a big opportunity for us, and we're a super small company, so we were really happy with the business. And then came out of the pandemic, and we're like, okay, what are we going to do next? So we want to take that kind of mindset of bringing solar power to places people don't expect it. And obviously you think of pergolas, you're like, oh wow, like what do you mean, what's solar power, how does that work? And honestly, think of an outdoor living room. Like you have your TV, you have your fan, you have your outlets, and imagine just the pain in the butt it would be to run electrical from your house to your pergola. And we just decided, hey, we're going to provide solar power, we're going to power that stuff up. And that brings us to now this year. We definitely kind of dipping our toe into the barbecue space, and we're going to see what we can do to kind of change the way people think about grilling in general. And that's why we're here.
So are you a live fire fan, or you just see a business opportunity?
No, super, super live fire fan. I live in Texas, obviously the cow behind me, but when you move
does that
to
mean
the
you live in
suburbs
Texas?
Yeah, well, I guess, it's a longhorn, but when you move to Texas and you move to suburbs, you kind of got to pick up a few things, and grilling was my go-to. I have a nice offset. I've got a gas grill. I had another small little green egg. So, love it. Just love grilling. And I knew I wanted to do something in the space, and I knew there were some better opportunities, and it just took time, to kind of be inspired. And personally, I was inspired with the two products we sell. Just first things first, with the Power Moose, that's what we call our solar power box that incorporates solar energy into the pellet smokers you would see out there, like your Traeger or your Pit Boss, and kind of just removing the wires from something like that. But personal story with the offset moose, the product you mentioned when we first started, that just came from me, for lack of a better term, having a few adult beverages last July 4th and putting on a brisket thinking I had it under control in my offset, and kind of passing out for a few hours and losing my fire and waking up and to a ruined 15-pound brisket. So I knew there had to be some type of solution there to kind of make things smoother, and that's where the offset mousse was inspired. Just basically bringing the convenience and the kind of predictability of an offset, from a pellet grill to an offset. That just was intrigued me. So I did a lot of research on how pellet grills worked, and obviously I know solar energy like the back of my hand, so I put them both together, and that's how we got the offset mousse.
So this is through solar panels. How are you, or do you make are you making them here? Do you have a business relationship with a manufacturer either in the States or, somewhere out of the country that you're able to get these? How does that work?
Excellent question. So I would say a majority, maybe like 85, 90% of solar panels are from China. So we have a supplier that sends them over just like everybody else. And that's how we give our panels. Our panels are an integral part, but believe it or not, pretty easy to get and use and assemble.
So I've just I've just introduced everybody to a relationship that I've had over the last 3 or 4 years with a guy who owns a Chinese manufacturing plant for gas grills. More or less, they're the first or second biggest gas grill manufacturer in the globe. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I hear about with Chinese manufacturing, maybe a stereotype, is you have to be on their ass because the minute they think they can skirt or cut a corner and maybe put a little extra in their pocket, they're going to do it. And if you're not there specifically on ground to monitor that fairly regularly, you might get caught holding the bag a little bit. Have you had any experience with that? And have you had to switch manufacturers through your time doing this?
That's an excellent question that no one's really asked me before. That's awesome. But no, with us being such a small company and me being, jack of all trades here, I see every product, every piece that comes into our workshop here. And yeah, from time to time, you'll get something that's broken or just not in good shape and you'll have to swap it out. But like I said, there's so many different manufacturers out there, and with our panels, we're not talking massive panels for these consumer goods that we offer. They're not big by any means, and our orders aren't huge bulks or anything like that. Like I said, we're a smaller startup, so if anything were to happen to be less than ideal quality wise, we can replace it and swap it pretty quick. And we're pretty hands-on when we're assembling things, so we can see it. It's not like it's going straight to a consumer or anything like that. Everything's quality checked, so not that big of a deal for us, but definitely in the future, if we do get pretty big, could become an issue. But hopefully, as alternative energy and like solar and things like that are more encouraged, quote unquote, by the powers that be, there will be more American manufacturers we can be closer with.
So let's talk about the grill stuff specifically. I have a Green Mountain Grill, a Trek or the Ledge, whatever it is. It's not the big one, but the middle one. So if I want to use Power Mousse, is this something that's going to install like onto the grill? Is it just like a power bank that I can roll up next to the grill and I'm going to be plugging into that versus tethering to the house? How does that work?
Love the question. So we basically have our mag lock system, and I say mag lock because it's not like trademarked or anything like that. But basically, you stick the power box on the pellet, the pellet hopper, and the panel is on top of the box. So it's all one unit with that particular product. So you just stick it on in your spot. And most pellet grills, you'll have like a handle on the side of your hopper. You just obviously unscrew that off and then just stick it on right there, and then basically plug and play. You plug your cord from your pellet grill into the power mousse just like anything else, and you're good to go. And then you're done. You have nothing to worry about. As long as you're not cooking briskets every day, you're in good shape. But if you are someone that is doing longer cooks every day, you may run into a little bit of an issue. Or if it's like super duper cloudy and you're going like through a cloudy week, it depends on where you're at. You may be in some trouble. But for the average consumer that's doing like steaks or I don't know, like a pork butt once or twice a week, you're in good shape. You have nothing to worry about ever.
Do I want to leave it uncovered so it's catching rays, if you will, and keeping a charge?
Absolutely. You want to keep it uncovered, and that's actually a really, really great question. Yeah, it depends on the environment you're at. Here in Texas, a lot of people just have their grills uncovered, and I would assume most of our listeners probably have a setup that's not, let's just say, terribly intensive when it comes to caring for it. It's probably the best phrase to say.
I cover all
Like, you
my
just
grills.
don't mind if
I
you do.
I talk
Okay.
shit about
But
everybody that does not cover a grill, especially if you're buying something $1,000 or more. Like, why
expensive.
wouldn't you put something over to keep the elements off of it? But maybe that's just me.
For
It
sure.
appears to be just me being in the minority. But I would have to either cut a hole in the cover to expose the solar panels, or just leave the cover off of it, I guess.
Yeah, good question. Honestly, with the magnets, they're pretty strong, and I would imagine you could basically still connect through the side of the cover. Obviously, your cover's not going to be able to handle the extra length, but I would imagine, and like I said, that's a great question. I would love to like kind of test it out, but I'm more than confident the magnets will be able to still stick once you do cover your pellet grill, and then you're good to go. Just let it go.
So full charge, and I'm in the sun doing, an all-day cook, whatever. How much time am I getting on it? Or as long as there's sun, there's going to be power?
As long as there's sun, you're going to have power. Now, say you're doing an overnight cook, that's pretty long. Like for example, we love briskets, so we're going to call it a brisket. You're overnight, let's call it not even the summer. The summer baby is probably like 8 hours or so in the middle of summer. So we'll say it's like spring or fall. So you're talking like maybe 12 hours of nightfall and no real light. You're going to make it that 12 hours and more with the battery size we have. So that's what I mentioned before. If it was a cloudy week and you were doing briskets like 3 nights in a row, which would be pretty absurd, maybe you're cooking for somebody or something like that, you might be in some trouble. But someone who's a professional like that, or kind of taking that type of dive, they're not cooking on a pellet grill, I wouldn't imagine.
What are we looking at cost-wise?
Good question. The Power Moose is retailing right now for $359.99. The Offset Moose is at $309.96. Both of them, like I said, we're a startup and we're dipping our toe in this arena right now. So we're talking a limited production run of, we started the production run with 100 units each. We launched probably like 4 weeks ago. So we have we have a pretty, I'd say 60-ish of both left. So we have a little bit of a run left just to kind of test the market, fill it out, and then see where we go from there. But response has been good, and we do think it's priced right for the type of customer that's looking for something like this and looking to take an opportunity to do something different, because this is really, I don't think there's anything else like this on the market.
So it's $360 for the Power Moose and $310 more or less for the
Offset Moose.
Yeah, and that's going to be a fan blowing into the firebox and then keeping temperature.
Yeah, good question. Basically, yeah. So think of it, and the easiest way to kind of explain it to someone that's like, oh, what do you mean? So with an offset smoker, obviously, just like anything else, airflow is key. But basically, we took how do I want to phrase this as correct as we can? But basically, we took the innards of a pellet grill and put it into a unit that basically turns your offset into as close to a pellet grill as you can get without letting it just cook by itself. And that's the easiest way to explain it. But it basically just has consistent airflow. You do have a heating rod, which you're not going to see from a lot of our competitors. A lot of our competitors are just a fan. So you have the heating rod, you have the fan blowing consistent air to keep temperature. And then obviously you don't have to worry about plugging it in or finding, I don't know, batteries somewhere. It's just good to go.
How are you promoting this? Aside from being on the biggest barbecue show ever, I mean, there's got to be other avenues you want to try and make this a success through.
Yeah, so obviously we start here, right, with you, Greg. But we do a lot of social media marketing. We do targeted ads. It's kind of I have a little bit of a background there just from my expertise back in the day. But we're definitely obviously direct to consumer. So our website is the best place to get this type of stuff. And obviously inquiry. Please reach out, ask questions. We're always here to explain things. But our ad game on social media is top notch, second to none.
And available for sale. So if I want to go tonight, purchase one, there's some inventory left for listeners to snag them up.
Absolutely.
What else are we working on? We won't tell anybody else, I promise.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at with barbecue, and we're gonna kind of test the market there. Between us, and I'm sure no one else, but we are gonna like venture into like, hey, these are attachments, these are accessories. But if we're doing the numbers we want to do, maybe we do think about doing our own pellet grill that has this incorporated, or maybe changing the offset game and offering an offset smoker that just comes with solar panels. And right now that seems like just a crazy thing to think about.
Totally.
But the more we kind of rev this up and get in our space, who knows, there's a lot of things happening in the world and a lot of changes where hypothetically you never know when a state might ban, cooking with fire or using propane, and this is an easy alternative to be like, well, hey, we're doing it, and this is kind of offsetting the carbon. So that's something we might have in our pocket down the road.
Let's assume this is going to go gangbusters. Traeger calls Mark, says, hey, this is Jeremy Andrews. We want to buy it. You sell for a price, or is this something you want to build out for a while?
Good question. This is something we want to partner with somebody on for sure. The company's mission is to put solar in places people don't expect, and we really want to spread the message that alternative energy is here and it's accessible, and it's like obviously not the end all be all, because we're in Texas, we still believe in oil no matter what, but it's just an opportunity for people to take advantage of free clean energy, right? So the faster we can do that, the better. So yeah, if Traeger wants to knock on our door and make an offer and they stick with our values, why not? But that's not going to be the end of the company or the vision by any means.
So you really do have passion. Instead of, writing a fuck you money check just to take and go off into the sunset, you really want to be a person that lends a greener thumb, if you will, to the whole world.
Absolutely, 100%. Like, we're not trying to. Yeah, absolutely. This isn't the end of it.
I'm the opposite, by the way. I want the fuck you money, and I just want to go into the sunset. But that's the difference between you and me.
I get it.
All right, so ritzworks.com is the website. RITZWERKS. Any significance on the spelling there?
Yeah, good question. So just inspired by a lot of engineering things, and Lockheed Martin was a big thing growing up, and obviously a big thing here in Texas, and their kind of special unit was called Skunk Works, and I always thought that was an awesome name. And obviously when I wanted to start my company, I wanted to call it Ritz Works for like shortening my last name and adding works to the end. And obviously when you go to get a domain, sometimes the domain isn't exactly there. So we dropped the O, added the E, and now we're pretty unique. We're the only ones out there, I think, that have the works, but it sounds good. It's awesome. We like it.
Ritzworks.com is the place to go. They're in stock, so grab them up, give them a try, and let Mark know what you think about them. Mark, really appreciate the time and the insight here this evening. Continued success.
Absolutely, Greg. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Mark Radvalsky right there, the CEO and Director of Business for Ritzworks. And if you're looking to untether from the house, plugging in your pellet cookers, or if you want a new solar-powered fan for the offset, you can do that too. I must have activated Google somehow saying something. I don't know what the hell I said. You can get the Power Moose, or you can get the Offset Moose. Let's try it out. I think I'm a buyer. Ritzworks.com, RITZWERKS. Listen up, gang. Our friends at Big Papa Smokers have something special just for you, listeners of the show, whether you're seasoned barbecue pro or a grilling newbie. Big Papa Smokers is your one-stop shop for all things barbecue, from their championship rubs, mouth-watering sauces, essential accessories. They've got what you need to take your food to the next level, both on the competition circuit or in the backyard. Here's the cherry on top. Big Papa Smokers offering listeners of the Barbecue Central show an exclusive deal. Use the code REMPE at checkout. That's REMPE. Get $10 off your next $50 purchase of rub, sauces, or accessories. Imagine the possibilities. Evaluating your ribs with Big Papa's Sweet Money, Big Papa's Desert Gold on your chicken, or better yet, pick up Double Secret and put it on your steak. Head over to BigPapaSmokers.com and start shopping today and start saving today. And don't forget to use promo code REMPE, R-E-M-P-E, at checkout to claim your $10 off your next order of $50 or more. Also, don't forget to check out Big Papa's full line of recipes at cookingwithbigpapa.com. And, of course, follow him on social media for amazing recipes. Let's wrap the show. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Let's get back to a guy who has more experience giving you his opinion than he actually has cooking. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
All right, welcome back. What is going on? All right. Stop. There we go. Google AI was talking. I couldn't figure out where the hell the voice was coming from. We thank Mark Radvalsky for joining us last segment, CEO, Director of Business Development over at ritzwork.com, talking about the Power Moose and the Offset Moose. So once again, if you're thinking about giving solar a try for your pellet cookers or your offset, why not? Easy to do. Buy a solar generator battery and plug the pellet grill into it. We do it at every comp. Haven't run the gas generator in over a year. Diane Me, keeping it green. Absolutely. All right, let's wrap it up all the way back in the first hour. We almost had Meathead. We didn't almost have him. We had no Meathead. You got to get updated on Joey Chestnut. And then after the failed Meathead segment, we had Robert Moss from robertfmoss.com, Southern Living's barbecue editor. He has a new 20 restaurant recommendation in Charleston, South Carolina. If you're going to be vacationing down there in Southern Living magazine, check that out. We also talked about the traditional Juneteenth dishes, barbecue, if you can believe it. Also, whole goats. So I put it out for one last time over the next week. If you're having a goat roast for Juneteenth, call me and you're in the greater metro Cleveland area. I will cover it. And then in the second hour, Pat LaFrieda made his return to the show. We talked about Joey Chestnut and how he has been his personal hot dog and bun counting judge for the last 6 or 7 years. I had no idea. We also talked about LaFrieda Meats running through the pandemic and coming out the other side successfully. And we ended on some non-beef alternative options and what that market might look like. And then closing out with Mark Radvalsky from Ritzworks. Big show planned for you next week, if you can believe it. We're already into the third week of June. 2024 rapidly coming to a close. So how do I always leave you? September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. And until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, this is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.
This is Dino Dan from Cypress, California, and you're watching the BBQ Central Show.